Hello, nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello,
nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello,
Now with this campaign, bang, dang, it's Andrew. Come roll with the Yang Gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Well, it was not exactly as planned, but those were all great hellos. Welcome to the show, Humanity First Movement. How are you guys doing?
Doing very,
Awesome.
very
How are
well.
you doing, Tom?
I'm doing fantastic, and I have to admit there are so many interesting organizations and humanity-related movements and groups going on. It's starting to be difficult to keep track. Can you guys give me a little bit of a background as to your efforts and where it started and just for those who are less familiar, how do we just get a kind of a quick intro and then we'll dig into more details?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. That's the exact problem that we are trying to solve. Right when the campaign ended, there wasn't the central figurehead the way there used to be. There wasn't a presidential candidate that everyone could be behind. And so a lot of groups continued to do work in all their different separate ways. And we realized that as a core group of Yang Gang leaders, we had a chance to really build a coalition that pulls all these different groups together and makes it a broader movement. We've been lucky to partner directly with Humanity Forward, meeting with them consistently, assisting with their COVID relief calls and those many, many micro grants that I'm sure you've heard about. And we are consistently reaching out to as many people as possible to bring them into the movement and make this something that changes politics forever.
Well, why don't we do this? How about we start with a little bit of background about each of the panelists here, because I just realized before we get into the Humanity First movement, we should probably get to know Tom, Gianmarco, and Eileen. So, Tom, since you started us off, who's Tom Jeffrey? Like, how did you get connected with this illustrious group?
Yes. So, hello, everybody. My name's Tom, and I was actually a former Venture for America fellow. Worked alongside Andrew when he was just a guy, when it was the random man before the random man ran for president. Since then, I managed to go back to my home state in South Carolina, work on some grassroots efforts there, join the campaign, assist a couple other candidates since the presidential campaign suspended, and then realized that the best way to get involved is to continue to build this grassroots movement and get plugged in. So I've been to Iowa, I've been to Nevada, I've been to South Carolina, and everywhere in between. And let's see this keep on building.
So you were connected with the Asian guy long before he became known as the Asian guy.
He was writing this book about robots that was about to get released, and it was exciting to see the early stages. Had no idea what I was signing up for. I thought it was just a random fellowship.
Cool. Well, we'll have to come back to your Venture for America story in a bit. But Gianmarco, what about you? How did you get connected?
Yeah, so I guess my past political involvement mainly started with the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. That is the first time I ever went beyond just voting every 4 years, so to speak. It really tapped into me and showed me that you can make a lot more of an impact if you get involved, and the earlier the better too. You help shape the conversation in that way. And I did some phone banking, some door knocking for him in California during the upcoming primary at the time. And then fast forward to 2018, I first heard of Andrew in the summer or fall, but at that point it really was too early to look at the primaries. And at the start of 2019, I stumbled upon his Joe Rogan interview around March, and I was immediately hooked. It really reminded me that, once you truly believe in something, you really care about the odds in front of you. You'll fight tooth and nail to move mountains, to do whatever you can to just get the word out and just see how far you can take it. And then I immediately got involved with my local Yang Gang, the SoCal Yang Gang, helped set up the first rally in April. Got super involved to the point that I eventually applied to be staff, and I relocated to Reno, Nevada for the month of end of November through the rest of the year, where I was a field organizer there. And then I got relocated to Iowa in January to help with the to help with the caucus and everything happening over there. And I remember, like, once the campaign did suspend shortly after, like, I wasn't even skipping a beat. Like, that's unfortunate, but I feel that Andrew has done a tremendous job spearheading this movement, and he's passed the torch along to us in a lot of ways to help move it forward. So I continued staying in touch with as many people as I could, and here I am now.
Right on. What about you, Eileen? Were you also part of the Yang 2020 campaign, like Tom and Gianmarco? Uh-oh. Maybe Eileen can't hear me. Eileen, can you hear me?
Eileen.
I can't. I can only hear GPS. I can't hear you.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, Tom was asking if you were also involved in the Yang 2020 campaign, like myself and Tom Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was. So yeah, just to give you a big backstory. I'm sorry I popped out there. I guess I'm not very tech savvy. But yeah, so I actually joined the Yang Gang when I was still living in Alaska and started the Alaska Yang Gang. And yeah, and then completely unrelated to anything Yang, I moved to Nevada in March of 2019. And Michael Root, actually, the Prince of Weaverville, had just founded the Vegas Yang Gang on February 14th. And so I joined right when I moved to Vegas. I became YGPC for Vegas. And then when the campaign came to town in September, I was hired by the campaign. So it went from grassroots to official campaign staff, and it's been just a crazy ride this whole time. After the campaign suspended, I was still a precinct captain here in Nevada for Andrew Yang. And then when I found out that this was all the Community First movement, before it was the Community First movement, started getting traction and people started getting active again, so I had to get involved and stay connected and make sure we built up a structure to get Andrew Yang in the White House in 2024.
Right on. Now, Eileen, can you hear me now or no? You can't hear me.
I can't
Can you hear
you. Nope.
That is so
I love
weird.
how you answered this question.
That is so crazy. Tom Jeffrey, can you hear me?
Oh, I can.
Yeah.
Weird. All right.
Yes,
Well,
I
Gianmarco,
can
you're
hear
you're gonna have to be my translator
Yeah.
when I have
I'll
questions
be-
for Eileen.
I'll be intermediary.
All right. Well, before we go deep into the Humanity First movement, I mean, I'm now talking to three former, Yang 2020 campaign people. I'd love to hear like what that was like before and after the suspension, because for so many of us, it was like a huge shock. And I'm wondering, did you guys sort of see it coming, and did you have time to kind of mentally prepare for it?
So just real quick to pass it along to Eileen. Tom is just simply asking, like, what was? Oh no. Okay. Well, I guess you can't hear me now.
We'll try and come
We
back.
gotta reconnect. But yeah, I guess I'll answer first. The campaign was a tremendous experience. We all, of course, knew we had tremendous odds in front of us, but that didn't stop us to see what we could accomplish. From my personal experience in Iowa, the night of the caucus, I think the general consensus for a lot of the areas where it was that we overperformed in a lot of places we didn't expect to, and as well as underperformed in a lot of places we didn't expect to. Of course, we wish the numbers could have been better, but I can easily say that we didn't fail because we didn't try. We definitely put in all the work we could, and all those late night hours was. The last 3 nights leading up to the caucus, personally, I slept a total of 9 hours, grand total. And I've never felt so not tired during the daytime when I did wake up. And I can say that a lot of people felt the same way over there, either the staff members or the countless super volunteers we had that came in from other parts of the country just to stay there for as long as they could to help. And it really showed me how it was just a daily amazing reminder of how awesome this movement is.
So it sounds like you were pushing hard till the last minute, and then the results came in, and what's your interpretation is that we did well in some areas but did unexpectedly not well in other areas?
Yes. Personally speaking, I was in the Storm Lake area, and we eventually found that the places we did best in was the people that showed up more than anything. It wasn't the people that had, for example, the voter commitment cards, or I mean the caucus commit cards, etc. It was the people we made a genuine connection with, the people that we really befriended. And it was a tremendous learning experience, of course. And looking back, or looking forward, I guess, because that's what we always should be doing. The more time we invest in people, just like we always tell each other we should, the better off not just this movement, but just everything else would be. And I just want to check, Eileen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear Tom? I guess over here.
What's up, Eileen?
Yes.
All
Okay, there we
right,
go.
all right, all
And
right.
we're back.
Okay, we're all connected. And Tom Jeffrey, I'm hearing a little bit of background noise from you, so I may from time to time have to mute you while others are talking. But we can unmute you now, because I was kind of curious, Tom Jeffrey. I mean, did you draw the same conclusion as John Marco, that it was that personal connection, and that we were kind of working till the buzzer kind of went off, and maybe we were hoping for a better outcome?
I think we shocked the world in a lot of ways. When I was sent to Iowa for the month of January, they actually directed me to northeastern Iowa, which is a stretch of the 5 counties that flipped harder from Obama to Trump than anywhere in the entire country. Howard County especially had the largest swing from those 2 places. And in that 1 month that we were there, we were building relationships, we were working with economic developers, we were doing a campaign in a way that isn't usually a standard type of campaign. And when we left, some of the Democratic leaders have consistently stayed in touch. They have been asking for different ways for us to keep the people engaged that they had never seen involved in the process, but that we were able to turn out. So I view it as a huge win. We are seeing the fruits of our labor consistently, whether it's the stimulus package that came out, whether it's the people that are looking for new ways to jump in and get involved. We are just getting started.
Right on. What about you, Eileen? How was it on your side, going from staff to suspended and kind of staff alumni?
I don't know how candid to be.
Yes, it's a very small channel. No one really watches us, just the hardcore.
I mean, I played a unique role, I think, on the campaign because I came from grassroots. My experience a lot of the time was this ambassador between grassroots and the campaign. I think that something that happened really on, at least here in Nevada, and from my understanding, I'm only recently engaged in politics. From my understanding, this is really common, but grassroots conflicting with official campaign, and I don't think I was prepared for it. So I was trying to help grassroots and campaign coordinate and work together, but because I think a lot of the campaign staff weren't as bought in as Yang Gang, there was just a difference of passion and pace. And so it left both sides really frustrated. And I think that lack of collaboration really hurt us. But I mean, we learned from it, and I think we'll do better next time. As far as after the campaign suspended, I'm really proud of the grassroots here in Nevada. I can't shout out my Vegas Yang Gang enough. We worked hard. Soy came into town. We still went to all these different, precinct locations, and we did get one delegate, one county level delegate. So I think that passion and the drive is real, and it's behind real policies and real solutions. And so it's just going to continue to grow.
Eileen, what do you think was the biggest misconception that the campaign kind of staff had about the grassroots folks, and then vice versa?
Yeah, great question. I think that honestly, it was a lack of maybe valuing or respecting each other's roles and expertise, or where they could find value. The Yang Gang, granted, right? I mean, campaigns, we know, field work accounts for a really small percentage of, the total win, strategy. But the Yang Gang wasn't just, and the grassroots of Yang Gang wasn't just mobilization volunteers. It's the story. And I think that that's something really that the campaign could have capitalized on better, was the story of Yang Gang and sharing our stories and really highlighting us and letting us bring the movement out into the mainstream, right? Rather than keeping us a little bit on a short leash, because maybe there was a lack of trust, since we all were pretty green. And then I think from grassroots, because we were so green and didn't really understand a lot of things, we didn't trust the machine or the campaigners, the people who've been doing this over and over again and have all the experience. So hopefully we can just build that trust back up.
So let's, this is a question for the whole panel. Let's say it's 2022 and, Andrew decides that he's ready to put the Jordans back on and get back on the court, what do you think we should do differently this time than last time?
And actually, that's the things we're focusing on right now. I mean, it's not only a question of what we can do differently when the time comes. It's what we can be doing today to lay the foundation for it to be easy. One thing I like to tell a lot of people, just to try to keep them engaged, is, sure, who wants Yang 2024 to happen unanimously across the board? We all want that, of course. And what if I told you what we can do to make that a slam dunk? What about when he announces his candidacy, he breaks millions of dollars, has countless endorsements from sitting members of Congress on both the federal and state level? Like, sure, for us, this past campaign was a massive experience. It was a lot of challenges, but there are so many things that we could be doing right now that will not just lay the foundation for a very solid Yang 2024 run, but even in the hypothetical situation that he doesn't run, by doing these things now, like supporting these candidates and advocating to your representatives, we're fundamentally changing the conversation in our society. But in terms of what he can actually do then, I guess, we did learn a lot in the campaign. And a lot of the relationship building that we're doing right now with them, I feel will pay dividends tremendously come time, because we're all viewing each other as strong equals, as partners. Whereas we don't feel like we're asking for permission to do things, or there's this overbearing sense of responsibility to get things done. No, let's just empower. The same way I tell people, the same way Andrew wants to create a trickle-up economy, we have to create a trickle-up movement, and that always starts from the ground up.
Right on. What do you think, Tom? What do you think we should be doing differently next time around?
The first thing is always starting with the communication and making sure that we are building that bridge between the different groups, which is something that's already ongoing. We consistently have communication with Humanity Forward. We've actually spoken with Andrew Yang. We've spoken with Zach Grauman, and we're all acknowledging the importance of linking grassroots to the main campaign, whether it's local candidates, whether that's a future presidential run. It's just having that flexibility and that opportunity to communicate and hear each other. One thing that's made this so exciting is that campaigning never existed the way that it does now. The opportunities that are out there, no candidate has ever seen, no campaign has ever experienced. So there's not a rule book, there's not a clear guide. And we get a chance to really test and iterate. One of our favorite things that we are looking forward to is continuing to expand the number of local chapters, whether it's a Yang Gang or switching into different kind of titles, having as many people on the ground with their own individual chapters that can test out things in their own community, see what works, report it, and make sure that we are constantly growing and evolving and seeing all the different practices. It should be flexible, it should be hybrid. And like John Marco said, this is us laying down that foundation.
Right on. And Eileen, next time around, it sounds like the relationship with the official campaign and communication with them would be also one of your goals. Anything else that you'll want to try and do differently?
Yes, I'd love to get Yang Gang trained up in some basic organization, mobilization techniques, get people confident as leaders so they can expand and grow their local gangs. Right. We have a lot of people that we activated, like I said, who didn't really have a lot of experience with this. And I'd like to just empower them over the next few years to be the leaders of this movement.
Cool. Let me ask you all about the congressional candidates. I don't know if you guys have been following Like I saw that Heidi Briona's, came in second, coming from nowhere, which, in a lot of ways is probably beat a lot of non-Yang Gang expectations. But I think a lot of us were hoping to get some Yang Gang into the Congress. Obviously, we still have David Kim, we have Mike for Kentucky, so we still have folks making a run at it. I'm just curious, like, where does the Humanity First movement? Are you going to be working with congressional candidates too, or is it mostly paving the way for the next presidential?
So one thing that we are doing is making sure at this stage not to officially endorse any candidates, but to support all the different coalition partners that are out there. So if there's candidates that have been supported and endorsed by Humanity Forward, then we are doing everything we can to mobilize, activate, engage volunteers to go support those candidates. And we're expanding what that definition of support means. It's not just the direct voter contact that we know is so valuable. It's not just the phone calls or the text messages. It's being able to assist with policy positions. It's being able to see the situation that's going on and lend that support wherever we can. So we are engaged with a lot of different candidates right now. And my hope is that we're going to have a lot more presence in Congress not too far in the future.
Yeah, so let's talk about the menu of services or activities that Humanity First movement is going to be kind of investing in, maybe what you offer today and what you want to offer or develop in the near future. What are some of the things that Humanity First will specifically be doing to really make an impact?
So you can go ahead with that one, Tom.
I'll start with the core three, and then I'll bounce it over to you for where we might go. So the core three things that we are doing from that external volunteer mobilization is the candidate support. It's our COVID relief calls, so it's assisting Humanity Forward in that effort, the $250 micro grants. And then it is assisting with as much opportunity as possible, all the different groups that are out there. So it's increasing chapters, it's giving people a place where they can be involved and be a part of the movement. So those are kind of our core base right now. We're assisting Income Movement, which is one of our coalition partners in their congressional pressure campaigns. And from there, we only see the foundation continue to grow. So I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so the way Tom phrases that, as you can see, we try to empower everyone. Like when someone comes in and wants to lend a helping hand in any way, we want to make sure that they're empowered and they feel fulfilled in what they're doing. And one of the things we're looking to set up is a ladder of engagement of sorts, because as we all experience with the Yang Gang, a lot of the people are political neophytes. They have never been involved in politics or campaign or maybe even voted before. And as we all know as well, that once you really start digging into what this movement's all about, it can get a little addicting. But we also want to make sure people don't feel overwhelmed. So whereas in like most traditional campaigns, they might ask volunteers to make phone calls or knock on doors. That might be a bit of a big ask, so to speak, for someone that's never been involved in that kind of stuff, and maybe might be not so outgoing to talk to strangers, or maybe they're introverted. So we try to just ease them in with more casual things to do, just to make them feel the sense of community, which I always feel has always been extremely the most important part of this movement, just the sense of community that we have. So it can be starting with things like our Humanity Hangs, which we work alongside Humanity Forward with, where we just get along a couple of times a week on a Zoom call with a couple of dozen people and just talk. Like a lot of people, given the world circumstances, are in isolation right now. And just this week, we had the topic of mental health, and we had Andrew and Evelyn drop by the channels and talk to people. And it was very heartwarming to see so many people there that thankfully that they were in a very good mental space, but that showed that they actually wanted to be there for someone else and needed someone to talk to. And that was really touching when I was in those conversations with them. And then from there, maybe you can do the COVID relief calling like we spoke about earlier. As many may have known, that Jack Dorsey from Twitter recently made a $5 million donation to Andrew's organization, allowing for 20,000 more applicants to get $250 microgrants. And what we're collecting volunteer support in right now is having people make those phone calls. I've done it before, and it's incredibly fulfilling. You're basically letting people know that help is on the way. And some of these stories that these applicants share with you are very touching. I've had stories where, of course, they're affected economically, or they may have been infected with the disease. And a lady once told me that she had just started a small business a few months ago, and that can't get off the ground right now because of the circumstances. And another gentleman told me that just before I called him, he was having a conversation with a spouse as to whether or not they can make rent that month. So you're basically having the opportunity to just make a positive impact on someone's lives almost immediately. Like we talk to them, they share with us their stories and what they're going through. At the end, we tell them, hey, so I wanted to let you know that someone's going to contact you very soon to verify your account information, and the money's on the way. And you can just, in the phone, just feel the sense of relief coming from their voice as soon as you share with them that news. And then once we, get people involved through those things, they can get more involved through things like candidate support and reaching out with other partnerships that we have and seeing how we can help move this entire movement forward. And it's one of the things I mentioned in the meeting with Zach Rahman the other week. Like, one of our goals is, as much as Andrew spearheaded this, we're still a movement. Like, we're trying to change the fundamental thought of that we're going from a following to a full-on movement right now that can just change the course and the conversation in our society.
Cool. Eileen, if you had a magic wand and unlimited resources for the Humanity First movement, what would be some crazy new things you'd want to do beyond the fundamentals that Tom mentioned and that community building and kind of connection that Jean-Marco was talking about?
Unlimited resources. I mean, I don't know. I just want to put the money. I just want all the money and put all the money in our hands. That's what I would do. I mean, just pay all of these volunteers that are putting in all of these hours. I can't tell you how many people are in this like Slack channel and going to these working group meetings, and they're putting in so much time and they're so committed. And I would just love to like be able to show them, that we appreciate them in some kind of way beyond just saying thank you. So yeah, I would just want to support all of these volunteers and support the movement financially.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Consistent with a lot of the principles of the movement, I would imagine.
Abundance.
Yes, indeed, the mindset of abundance. Let me ask you all this: how did you decide to start a independent organization versus just volunteering directly for Humanity Forward? How was that a conversation that you all had, and how did you arrive at it? Maybe Tom?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. You could start, Eileen, then we'll get Tom's view.
Well, I mean, I think the reason why maybe we're all a little hesitant is because that conversation is still, happening as far as like exactly where that line is and like how, it's still pretty fluid. We do know that we are working directly with Humanity Forward, and we are separate because we are about policies and not a person necessarily. Like we are about pushing ideas and policies. And so that's why we're a movement. But as far as the exact line between like Humanity Forward and us, I mean, that's all still being negotiated right now. So if you're interested in helping us figure that out, come on over.
What do you think, Tom?
Yeah. It's one of the benefits and the reasoning behind having it as two separate organizations rather than a direct volunteering arm under Humanity Forward is, like Eileen said, it's a broader movement than just that one organization. And what we're doing is giving ourselves the flexibility to support a wide coalition. So there are going to be times where different members within our broader movement support various candidates that fall under the overall banner of Humanity First. This frees us up to have that flexibility where we are not endorsing, we are just volunteering and lending as much support everywhere as we can. And it gives us the flexibility, it gives our partners the flexibility, and it gives all of the volunteers on the ground who want to go support the people in their own backyard, support the people that they think have the biggest chance to make change, the different projects or policies that they think need to be pushed forward the most. This gives them the flexibility to do it. It's still, the exact nuances are going to be up for debate for a little while. We're figuring out all those fun kinks. But the big takeaway is that Humanity Forward wants to partner with us as Humanity First Movement as those partners so that we both have a little bit more flexibility and can bring about bigger change.
Yeah, would it be fair to say, if I were to read between the lines, I mean, it sounds like Humanity Forward is an Andrew Yang centered organization and initiative, and that's probably like job one. Whereas the Humanity First movement is sort of inspired by the Yang 2020 campaign and that platform, but it is not necessarily all about advancing Andrew's sort of place in public service.
Yeah, it's a very interesting relationship, so to speak, because as many people still see Andrew as a de facto leader, so to speak, of this movement, it's still a matter of understanding letting everyone know that it's up to us how far we can take the movement in general. And as to what Tom and Eileen were saying, like the relationship we're developing with them allows for such autonomy that, when Tom talks about people want to support candidates that they want to support, and it gives them the empowerment more than anything to do that, and feel like they have control over how they want to change the world in so many good ways.
Right on. We're about to probably open it up for some audience questions, but before we go into that, were there topics or specific initiatives or asks or calls to action that you wanted to mention so that folks watching this can hear from you directly before we take their questions?
Yes, we have those 3 main volunteer opportunities, the COVID relief calls, the candidate support, and the congressional pressure campaigns. All of those are things that are happening right now. Congress is debating various stimulus packages and support, various CARES packages right now. There are people who need money and need support, and our COVID relief calling can provide that support right now. And just like we saw with Heidi, she made an incredible mark and is going to continue to do so. But these elections are coming quickly, and if we're not careful, they will slip us by. And so we have so many opportunities for people to jump in right now. And if you're interested, we'll be sure to share a link to sign up and get involved.
I presume, Tom, is that link available from the Humanity First Movement .org website, or is it elsewhere?
Yes, it should be available on the website, and we have a separate link that we can share as well. That's a direct sign up.
Okay, yeah, feel free to, if you guys want to hit me up in the private chat, or I'll keep an eye out on the general. If any of your team wants to put it in the general chat, that's fine too.
All right.
Are there other topics or things that you wanted to hit before we just do like rapid fire stuff from the audience? No? All right. I saw a question earlier about how do you guys think about supporting existing versus starting new kind of Yang Gang related clubs, organizations, groups? Do you feel like we have too few, too many? What's your take?
That's an Eileen question if I've ever heard one. She knows how to start chapters.
Yeah, no, it's a tough question, right? Because you don't want redundancy, you don't want inefficiencies, you don't want those things. But at the same time, if people are passionate and they have a group of people that they want to work with and they find shared purpose, then go for it. I don't ever want to discourage anyone from starting or for being a leader in the movement and creating energy and creating a little following. I think that's always a good thing. I do think that as these little organizations that are popping up, little and big across the country, we're gonna find out about each other. There's initiatives right now that are happening in the working groups, our regional organizing working group. Shout out to them. We are trying to make all these connections and learn about each other so that we can reduce those inefficiencies that might exist from having maybe too many. So I think that it's a work in progress, and we'll all be able to collaborate. And we're already starting to. So it's just going to get better and better.
Here's another grassroots question, which is that oftentimes as a grassroots organization gains traction, it can be infiltrated or subverted or influenced by the establishment power structure. You see this even with Herzog's run, where he's getting a lot of pressure from what I interpret to be Nadler and associates to really stop making so much trouble and just get with the program. Do you guys have a fear or concern about sort of the existing power structure just kind of absorbing this movement and just using that as a way to kind of suppress it?
I mean, I have that concern. I feel like everyone should, right? You should be concerned. You should stand guard of your and over your movement and your ideals. But I also think, again, this kind of goes back to what I talked about before, that disconnect between campaign and grassroots, because there is some pragmatism involved. There is a game to be played. And you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot because you're clinging to these maybe unrealistic ideals. And that's really hard for me to say. If anyone knows me, they know that I'm like really idealistic. So it is a balance. And unfortunately, we have to play the game, according to the rules that have been written, and also try and advocate for new rules at the same time. So there is a balance to. I'm sorry, I feel like all of my answers are all these nuanced. It's not very black and white, but
yeah, no worries. I think that's how the world often works. And Tom, is that part of? I guess that's part of the benefit for the Humanity First movement being its own organization. Was that in the calculus, or was it just more flexibility in general? Do you feel like independence is an important element to the organization's success?
I don't believe it was a part of the calculus specifically, because the conversation was on the volunteers. So the overall power dynamic wasn't the main focus between Humanity Forward and the Humanity First movement. But since we have established ourselves, we are constantly working on power and authority, making sure that's clearly communicated and clearly shared and distributed throughout the movement. There's strategies like having the rolling board with shorter terms so that everyone has a chance to be involved. There's proposal processes for different projects we want to take on. Everything we're doing, we are trying to make sure that as many voices, as many perspectives as possible are being included. And maybe a little tougher, may move a tiny bit slower because of it, but you always seem to end up moving in the right direction. And that's the goal. Yes, it's a concern, but I think we're taking the right steps to prevent that from being an issue.
Got it. Well, Faro Bay had a question about the sort of UBI kind of micro pilots and stuff that Humanity Forward is doing. And now I guess with Jack from Twitter giving $5 million, like, do you guys have any thoughts on how this money is sort of managed and stored and kind of organizationally and legally how this all works?
Yes. Do you want that?
Oh no, I mean I could just say like I'm not aware of the strict legal details, but I'm fully confident that they're abiding by every correct regulation to do the important work that needs to be done and just getting relief to the hands of the people.
Tom, what are your thoughts? Do you ever get any people asking about that, or are people generally comfortable with the Humanity Forward organization structure and kind of fiduciary management of that money?
So this actually brings up one of the biggest benefits of direct cash transfers, is that you can see the money go from point A to point B, and there's not a lot taken off the top. And so we are able to, not us directly, Humanity Forward is able to demonstrate that here's the money coming in, and here's the money going out. Here are the people that are getting helped. The moment we got that $5 million from Jack Dorsey, that extremely kind donation, that was something that immediately they knew around 20,000 people would be able to be helped. So the math is simpler because it is a direct cash transfer, and that actually brings in a level of transparency then that just allows you to be more effective and reach farther.
Right on. All right, here's another one. How do you stay mentally healthy? I mean, probably particularly challenging in this lockdown world. But curious if you guys can share. I'm curious about it too.
I myself, when the campaign ended, I decided I needed to take some much needed R&R. I actually went on a 10-day Dhamma Vipassana meditation course in California towards the end of February, I believe. And it was just 10 days out in the wilderness. You can see the stars everywhere, completely disconnected from society. My phone was in a locker, and I just meditated for 10 days straight. And that was something I've been wanting to do for a while. But then I got out, and then the first thing my Yang Gang group chat says is that, oh, Steyer is out and coronavirus is in, because the South Carolina primary had just happened. And the world kind of turned upside down for me when I got back into it. And for me, myself, since we don't have, I guess, the pressure of a presidential campaign looming over our shoulders indefinitely, I've been taking a huge steps to make sure I maintain my health well. Like, I make sure I'm eating right, I make sure I'm exercising, both of which admittedly I didn't do much, especially towards the later days of the campaign. And I just try to keep, I would like to get back to journaling too. Even though it does take time to write 2 pages long form sometimes, just getting your thoughts on paper a lot of time can be very centering and open up a lot of avenues in your brain you didn't know you had before.
Yeah, I'll say I don't think I'm doing a really good job. So like, I think it's something I need to be, focus on more and prioritize better. It's really easy to get caught up in this because it is a dopamine push for me to be with my Yang Gang and to be on these Zoom calls and to be highly engaged. It does make me feel good in the moment, but I realize that I am still kind of like in this high engagement campaign mode. And I know that it's not sustainable. So I know that I need to, start eating healthier, get better sleep. But I did pick up a new hobby. I did start learning guitar. So, and I've never really been like a artist or creative type. So this has been a really fun experiment for me. And I will say that's probably the only thing I'm doing currently, but I have intentions of doing a better job of monitoring my mental health.
Thanks for sharing, Eileen. What about you, Tom?
I cannot play guitar. The first thing I will say is from an organizational standpoint, the board members, the interim board members, have made sure to lead by example. And so there are an enormous amount of meetings going on because there's a large amount of work that needs to be done. We're building and expanding a national movement that's going to take work. But what we're doing is we are actually making every single interim board member take time off and sit down on certain meetings and not participate so that the work can still progress, but we have a chance to ground ourselves, get a little more settled, and get the R&R that we may not normally give ourselves. There's a kind of a positive, crazy type of personality that brings you into this type of work where you want to be involved all the time. And by us leading by example and making sure that we are visibly pulling away from a lot of the overcommitments while still pushing the work forward, it's definitely helping. Me personally, I'm sitting outside. That's a beautiful peach tree right there, and I'm just making sure that every chance I get, I'm outside. I'm enjoying some fresh air, and trying to decompress. That and my dog Noodle. She's the real winner here.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on the dog front. I think in a lockdown world, dog is I mean, they've always said dog was man's best friend, but my God, during a lockdown, can be a huge sense of positive energy with at least with a dog like Noodle or like my Miss Daisy. So let me ask you guys this, Joe Biden, like it's easy for us to focus a lot of our energy on 2024. Sometimes I find myself thinking more about 2024 than the 2020 election. But I obviously, you guys are building a strong movement. You have a lot of experience from the Yang campaign. What role, if any, do you think you will play in the Biden effort? Since whether you love him or not, he's probably a reasonable alternative to the current occupant of the White House, at least in my opinion. Is the Humanity First movement going to get involved in the general presidential election?
The focus right now is building out the broad movement. We are making sure as many people are as active as possible, engaged, volunteering, contributing wherever they can. Ideally, that means that people consistently stay involved and do as much as they can to push the country in the direction that they see fit. We'll see what that turns into as we get closer to the actual general. But at this stage, we are focused on activation. We're focused on building that movement and getting as many people involved as we can.
Yeah. And I can confidently say that, you know, this movement in general pushes people to do things they never would have done before, especially when we talked about the countless people that have never been involved in politics. Like I remember going out to just walking through the casinos in Reno and talking to people about Andrew and joking about it and asking them, like, you know, hey, do you hate politics? And they would say no. And I'm like, and then you'll love this guy. Now to give them a card and have a conversation with them. And just for them to see our palpable excitement about this, you know, they just get a little interested. And I strongly feel that, you know, the more people we activate through this movement in the coming days, weeks, and months, those will also translate to people that have never voted before that will exercise their right come November.
Eileen, what about you? Are you fired up about Biden?
Really put me on the spot there, Tom.
Well, if you're not the only one who's not. I mean, I have had my misgivings about our nominee for a while.
I know that I'm gonna be a good Democrat, I guess. And
Yeah.
I know what I'm gonna do in the voting booth. It's just I'm gonna need to take some time to like be in an okay place about it. That's all. Like I know what I'm gonna do. It's just, you know, being adult is hard sometimes.
No, I hear you. It's particularly hard since we had such a compelling person that was literally on the ballot.
We had a candidate. Like we had a candidate. Hashtag could have had Yang. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I just tweeted about that today. You know, you look at all the people that were running, you know, of course, including Yang, but there were a lot of other candidates that are pretty exciting. On the other hand, you have to pick the person that you think will be best for the country in November, and so we'll make a choice, of course. I'm guessing if Biden came out pro UBI, I think a lot of us would feel differently. What do you think, Tom? You want to get in there?
Well, of course, UBI tends to be a spark for a lot of people in this movement. It's something that motivates a lot of people and gets them involved. One point I did want to build on that John Marco had said earlier is that when we are doing this work, it's about realizing that a lot of people are going into this election without the enthusiasm that they thought they would. And what we want to do is make sure that people do not become jaded. They do not step away from politics entirely. They do not forego their American right to vote, and they stay involved. And so that's the main focus, is that we know if we aren't doing the work, people will be staying home come November. And we want to do as much as we can to get people involved in the system and realize that they can help shape the country to be the thing that they want it to.
All right. Well, I would love to wrap up this interview with one final question for each of you. And what I've noticed is that different people interpret the Humanity First movement, the Humanity Forward kind of movement, the Humanity Everything, sort of Make America Think Harder, like, and Yang 2020, like we all came to it from a different place. And it's sometimes a bit of a Rorschach test. You know, what was the Yang campaign about to each person? And I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on, like, when you try and distill it down, especially for the Humanity First movement, for this organization, what are those core values or policy positions or principles or objectives that you think if you had to really boil it down, it would be blank? What would that blank be?
Well, for me, it's the Yang Gang values, the 6 Yang Gang values. We did that in the Vegas Yang Gang before every one of our organizing meetings. We would read out loud the 6 Yang Gang values. You know, humanity first, abundance, transparency, integrity. You know, math. And I think those shared values really brought everyone to get not left, not right, forward. That's probably one of my favorites. So I think. Yeah, for me, it's all about the values. And I think maybe that comes from my military background as well. You know, we have these values that we all come together around. And that's what allows us to have such a diverse military that comes together and really is like die hard for each other. And so, yeah, for me, it's a no brainer. I think it's those values from the Yang Gang.
No, I absolutely agree with that. For me, in general, it was the entire concept and idea of humanity first. And as well as a not left by right forward, because as someone who traditionally leans left on issues, one of the most fulfilling things for me when joining this movement is speaking to people who have drastically different political opinions than myself and just having a respectful conversation with them. It's really like, you know, no matter who you vote for, I think you should vote for whoever you want. It's your decision at the end of the day. But when we have such a divided country where people on one side can be pushing and maybe even unfortunately attacking those on another side, no matter what side it is, like that's not bringing the country together whatsoever. Like they are first and foremost our fellow Americans. That's what I always reminded myself, and I told people, like they might have different opinions than you, but at the end of the day, like they're your fellow countrymen, and you have to understand them more than anything. And it was amazing just to be able to have these conversations with these people and just try to understand them. Like going to Iowa, having been in urban cities my entire life, and going to somewhere I've never been to before, like understanding that, you know, these people have lives too, and I want to understand what they're going through and understand why they feel the way they do, and so I can just bridge that gap and try to make a better place for everyone involved, really.
Right on. Thank you, John Marco.
All right.
Tom?
Somehow I have to follow that. I got into this work as an entrepreneur. Politics was never really my focus because I thought it was exhausting. I thought it was people yelling at each other for the sake of yelling at each other, because that's what it's become. Politics isn't inherently divisive, but it's become that way. And for me and for a lot of people in this movement, it's something that we know that we can fix. We can establish a way for people to engage with each other in a positive way, in a humanity first way that acknowledges those differences and realizes that political divisions are entirely made up and they can change. One thing that we are actively working to build within the Humanity First movement and make a central part of what we're doing is an open feedback loop. When people say, oh, this is a really cool policy that I think really aligns with what y'all are trying to do, we want to hear that. We want to be flexible. We want this to be a wide open umbrella for people to come in, express those views, and have that flexibility. At this stage, because we are in the earliest part of it, the focus is going to be on universal basic income. It's going to be on human-centered capitalism, the core tenets from the campaign that we originally broke off from. But over time, we're going to see it shift. We're going to see people come in with new inventive ideas, new inventive policies, strategies to get involved and make a difference in America. Why not have that open tent and see people get involved? And that, for me, is humanity first.
Right on. Well, let me wrap with this. Eileen brought up the 6 Yang Gang values. So let me just share those for just as a refresher for everybody. I think you should be able to see. All right, here we go. You've got humanity first. So this is about building a new economy that puts people first. Integrity and transparency. Abundance. Grace and forgiveness. Not left or right, but forward. Math. I'm curious, of the 6, which do you guys think is most kind of has had the most impact on you or resonates most with you guys personally, each of you individually? Maybe Eileen, we'll start with you. You mentioned at the beginning of a lot of meetings, you guys will talk about them. Is there one that speaks to you more than the others?
Yeah, I think consistently there is one that sticks out, but it changes. And I think right now for me, it is grace and forgiveness. I think there's a lot of trauma that we're all kind of processing, and that we're maybe still experiencing some of that trauma. And we not only should be extending like grace and forgiveness to each other, but to ourselves. So just a lot of compassion is what I'm trying to tap into right now. I think as we're building, we want to make sure that our anxiety is low, our compassion is high. And so that one for me really resonates right now in this period of our movement.
John Marco,
I kind of
is
want
there one of these?
I think I want to let Tom go before us this time.
All
so
right.
we feel an answer from him.
Tom, go for it.
That is John Marco saying that he is going to bring us home. So for me, I would say the not left, not right, but forward has been my driving principle. I grew up in an extremely conservative household. My father had, before he had a chance, he was planning to vote for Trump. And there's this whole sense of the first thing that we should do is go find a group which we want and figure out which groups are not a part of that group. That's the way that people kind of view the world. They separate and then they deliberate. And for me, not left, not right, but forward is saying, let's focus on what we can build together. Let's see what that shining city on top of it can be, and let's start moving that direction. Let's not split into all these factions, but see what we can build together. And that's been a big part of my journey.
Thanks, Tom. John Marco.
Yeah. For me, it's a bit of a tie for me, but in general, like as Eileen was saying with the grace and forgiveness, I think an important thing to always reflect on that is that our intentions are pure. We might come from different backgrounds and ways of viewing things, and we sometimes things can get, in my opinion, unnecessarily tense. But at the end of the day, we should always remember to take a step back and remember that we're all here because we want to make this impact along the world, and there should be no reason for these tensions to exist. We just have to just calm down sometimes and just be thankful of everything we've accomplished. As a bit of a side story, I remember the night of the caucus in Iowa. After my precinct was done, my parents called me asking me how everything was, and I told them, listen, I remember 4 years ago refreshing the results on AP 17 times an hour is not going to change the results. Right now, I'm just going to tune everything out and then probably for the first and last time celebrate everything we've accomplished with the volunteers we had around me this entire time. Things were tense, but sometimes we have to remember, we all broke tooth and nail, and we're here to just push forward as much as we can. And then the other thing for me is, of course, simply humanity first. That is the original theme that resonated with me coming into this. And, just the divisiveness of everything is just completely unnecessary. We're fighting where it's the year 2020 and we're still fighting about things that I think we shouldn't be fighting about. We should be trying to focus on what we can do to make this world a better place for each individual one of us, regardless of the means one might have and not, or means to contribute. We have to be able to help people in every level of society. And as Andrew says with UBI, build that floor, build that foundation so that everyone has the potential to always be able to exceed more.
Right on. Well, I guess I gotta just say thank you to all three of you and all the volunteers in the Humanity First movement. You guys are super inspirational. It would have been so easy just after the campaign suspension to, go back to TikTok or Reddit or whatever we do. And you guys are really putting in the effort and putting in the blood, sweat, and tears to really try and help our country. And when it's not that cool, he's not running anymore, his campaign's no longer active, and it's going to take a lot of patience and grit to make this happen. But I think everybody listening to this would agree that it's a prize worth winning, and it's an aspiration worth fighting for. So thank you for coming on to the Nerds for Humanity show. I really have enjoyed the conversation. And
thank you, Tom, for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again real soon. And with that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
All right, so you'll start, then I'll go, and then Tom.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's like we're gonna show how we
We'll get it right this time.
Yeah, we're gonna do an after action report. So let's be super clear. I'll go, then John Marco, then Tom, then Eileen. You ready? I love it.
All right.
Goodbye, nerds.
Hi, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
What the hell, Tom? Shoot. No. We can't end like that. There was a delay with Tom.
Go.
All right, let's do it again. Come on. Ready?
Think of it as a wave, all right? We're doing
Yeah.
a wave across the thing.
Tom, maybe the rhythm. You got to work on the rhythm a little bit there. All right, so Tom, when John Marco's just about to
I
end,
blame it on a hot spot, not on the rhythm.
Oh, of course. It's the Wi-Fi problem. All right, we'll try it again. Here we go. Goodbye, nerds.
Hi, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Bye, nerds.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Keep it real.
Absolute pleasure, Tom. Thank you.